Good morning. Good morning, everyone. This is Suman Timsina from International Development Institute, and we welcome all of you to today's webinar, and it's on risk management in procurement. So before we get into webinar, we'll go over a few housekeeping. So it will be moderated by our colleague Elizabeth Kasonde, and today's presenter is Joseph Rugari from Mali. And we will take the question and answers, questions from all the audience. So if you have any questions, send it in chat or send it in Q&A. And if we have time, we may pick up a few questions from Facebook Live. We're going to go on Facebook Live in IDI's Facebook page, International Development Institute. And if you have not checked it out, please check out our Facebook page. And before we get into the subject, we just wanted to announce that that IDI is also hosting a training program for 10 days on procurement, and that starts on November 30th. Registration is on right now, and you can register it online. Go visit our website or visit our Facebook or LinkedIn page. And our colleague Elizabeth has been sending out email to the mailing list that we have of thousands of people. So without further delay, I will introduce our today's host and my colleague Elizabeth Kasonde, and she coordinates our procurement program. So Elizabeth, all yours.
Thank you, Suman. So I'll start first by introducing Parashu, who's our managing director. Parashu, you can say hi and open your video. He's our managing director for IDI. And also I have Rosen, also a team member here at IDI. Our speaker today is Joseph, who's a procurement expert in agriculture. He is currently working in Mali and Burkina Faso. He has experience with working for the World Bank as well the African Development Bank, and has also worked in Rwanda as a procurement engineer in the transportation sector. So I will leave it up to you, Joseph, to begin your presentation, which is on risk management in procurement.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for this brief introduction. And the topic you asked me to present, which is about risk management in procurement. And this is a topic, is very complex topics. In this 1 hour we are together, I think we not just raise all the matters, but we just emphasize the most important aspect and how to manage it, how to identify it in procurement. And procurement risk, as you know, there is a relationship between buyer and supplier through a contractual relationship. And through this contract relationship, there is many steps. That's why it's calling procurement cycle. And through the implementation of the stage of this cycle, there is many risks which are occurred during the process. That's why we are just going together through this small presentation, step by step, to know what kind of risk to go through the details. So, please feel free also to interrupt me and for some question explanation. So when I'm starting by definition of risk, risk may cause because is exposure to a loss or a consequence of uncertainty, or it can also be life certainty. There is some uncertainty or certainty. It may be because the cause is for no action was being taken, so there is a risk. There is also action was being taken, there is also a risk. There is also some event which are not previsible event, which we call the force majeure. So this is kind of risk we may find during the procurement. And the risk has two aspects. There is an aspect of threat. So bad thing may happen, or there is also some opportunity. Sometimes not taking action may be a good thing to avoid some mistakes. But what is sure, risk cannot be avoided. But there is, as in life, is the same in procurement. Risk can be managed, identified, and managed. So, in details, what kind of source of risk do we have in procurement? There is external factor, which most of in contract terms, they say force majeure, unprevisible, like political, economic, and natural. There is also risk due of project complexity. If the project is very complex, so there is many risks to face. There can be also inadequate project planning. This is very common in procurement, in even project. When there is lack of planning, so there is also the probability of having high risk. There is this aspect of when during the course of procurement, when there is improper management of process, we may find also risk. There is also this risk due of fraud, corruption, unethical and unprofessional behavior. This is a kind of major risk we are encountering during the procurement activity. So this is just now, this type of risk is just summarized, maybe political, economical, social, environmental, reputational risk for image of organization, operational compliance. This is the type of risk which are summarized. Now, how the process to manage the risk? First of all, is to identify the risk, to assess the risk, to define a risk management plan, and to implement this risk management plan, and to review how the implementation of this risk. So that's why it's kind of cycle. And this is a strategy, this is a methodology we have to apply in every step, in every aspect in procurement activity. And we'll see more details at each stage, what shall we do? So this is, I present just, is kind of, because all the risks are not, I have not the same importance. This diagram shows that there is this probability, likelihood for the risk to occur. There is also the impact. When you try to manage risk, you have to structure the kind of risk we are facing. There is what we call low risk. Low risk, they may be in this diagram at low stage, meaning the impact is very low and the likelihood also are low. This category of risk is easy to manage. There is also the risk which the likelihood are low, but the impact are high. We'll show some example during the presentation. There is also medium risk and likelihood are high, but the impact are low. There is also high risk in red, meaning likelihood are high and the impact are also high. So when we try to manage to identify, as I show during the previous presentation, when we try to manage the risk, we have to first of all to identify what kind of risk we are facing with. So on the benefit of risk management, there is great confidence of right supply at right time. The procurement objective most of the time is to supply in the right time for good quality and in transparent and competitive manner. So this is when the risks are really good, are well managed, we have this benefit. But also the better control of uncertainty. There is also the reduce of impact. There is also improved decision making and adherence to the realistic estimates. This kind of benefit is a kind of management of procurement, because when, as I say, to write this, to supply for the right quality, quantity, and on time, this means that we have to avoid all this kind of risk. So when the management of the risk is well done, so you better control the uncertainty, you reduce the impact, we improve the decision making for the procurement and for the business process, and meaning also there is also you are also target the right price. There is no over cost, overestimation of the cost. So this is kind of benefit may find when the risks are well managed. Now, there is many, during the procurement life cycle, there is many risks, but most of common risk we are facing most of in our working environment in the UN systems. This is kind of summary of risk we are facing most of the time. Is lack of adequate need assessment. Sometimes the assessment, because we are procuring a need from a need. When the need assessment not well properly done, meaning the specification are not clear, or the TOR are not clear, are vague, or there is a lack of proper assessment. So when we are tendering, and the result, of course, will impact on the quality, because the assessment was not done properly. Another risk we are facing is in planning. Most of the time, the planning is really a tool for better to target the time. For example, in FAO, planning is agriculture season. Our planning has to be based on the agriculture season to deliver agriculture input to the beneficiary, which are most of the time in poor, in remote areas. And if this planning is not very well done, so there is many risks. There is also risk of budgeting in procurement. Most of the time, the budget, the estimation budget has to be based on the market research and on also from accurate information. When the budget are not properly done, we are facing some risk. So there is other risk regarding the procurement method. Most of procurement methods are opening competition, which are open to every supplier. And sometimes this is procurement method may cause a risk of of transparency, because some UN organization, most of UN organizations are using the funds for the donors. And during the audit, if procurement was not properly done, this is a very bad impact for the organization. The other kind of common risk, there is a time frame for the preparation of the offer. Most of the time, this is really due of the planning. And when the time of preparation of offer is not sufficient, or when there is no a proper roster or proper from vendors, so the result may not be what we have expected. So this is a kind of common risk in procurement. There is also have not enough information regarding the profile of the vendors. And when we already contract the vendors, and if the vendor is not performing well, we have to restart the process, and the impact of this this lack of capacity of vendor may be a big risk. There is also the lack of competition due of different many aspects. One example is collusive practice, or perhaps conflict of interest in the situation, lack of proper segregation of duties. Segregation of duties meaning that due of the transparency, the process means the one who opened the tender is not the one who will evaluate the tender, and the award also are given by a committee. This segregation of duty allows to avoid also risk. And when there is a lack of proper segregation of it, we may find a risk in the process. There is also, when we are awarding a contract or a purchase order, when some condition, general condition of organization are not mentioning clearly how to conduct the implementation of contract, this is also another source of risk. When there is no warranty clause, when there is no some appropriate clause in contract, this is also the source of risk. So during the implementation of contract, procurement staff have to be very careful in the documentation they are providing, because it may be also the source of risk. Now, we have seen that there is how to manage the risk. There is we may not avoid risk, but we may manage risk in order to reduce it. Now, how to manage the risk? There is this. The process has to be transparent. The competition for selection of vendors, the process of selection of vendors have to be very competitive. We may to set up a proper segregation of duty. Documentation, the procurement documentation have to be standardized with the same information. We provide the information. There must have an effective internal control system and monitoring, and also a strong accountability framework. A strong accountability framework is an internal process, control process in the organization. In this internal control process, there is an effective accountability, because at each stage there is an internal control system which makes sure that the procedure were properly done. And the aspect of to manage risk also, during the project preparation, during the project planning or procurement planning, the early involvement of a procurement officer in a project preparation, in a project planning are very relevant to see to check if all information, adequate information are available in the project or in the procurement plan, which is which within the project. The other aspect of managing the risk is to follow established procurement rules and procedure. Each organization have its own procurement manuals, and most of the time, the source of risk is procurement are not follow properly the rules. And when it's about specialized procurement, advice of high level of senior management are very important, relevant when we are not able to handle all the complex issues in this procurement. So there is also the training need. The training for the procurement staff is very also relevant. Now, this is common risk in procurement and how to manage it. Now, there is, as I said before, there is different level of risk. There is the risk which procurement staff may manage by themselves. There is risk which they have to seek for advice. And there is this different, the risk of high impact, procurement may ask, is better to ask advice. But for the procurement with low impact, it can be managed within the unit without the intervention of the supervisor. And the frequency, when the risks are very frequent, you have to pay very careful attention, because it's this meaning that there is a system which are not proper. Because if the risks are every time repetitive, meaning that there is the system, how you are working is not really, there is a problem, is to review the procedure, because a risk can be one time, not every day, every time. So within your system, the procurement should just pay attention how to identify the kind of the risk and to find also a solution not to repeat. There can be on some intended document, there may be in evaluation, may be in contract. So I think this needs many trainings to find out, to avoid kind of risk which are very repetitive. And now this is a diagram which we're showing below. There is this unaware risk. When it is low, the risk, when the impact on the performance is manageable, and this is a kind of attitude on the risk. There is also, but we have not to obsess by the risk. You have not to ignore the risk, but we have to find the way to manage the risk. This is the kind of approach to the risk. Is not ignore the risk. The risks are there. Not obsessed by risk, but we have to find the way, the way may be managed very well, the risk at a very satisfactory level. Now, this is kind of attitude vis-a-vis of the risk. There is kind of risk taker, risk aware, risk averse, and risk neutral. And this kind of attitude also exists. So when there is, for the risk taker, does what she feel like and does not take. There is this kind of attitude are common also when we are facing the risk. So no, there is many aspects when we are facing the risk. There is to ignore or avoid the risk. So meaning decide not to be to become involved, to return a risk, accept the portrayal of risk and associate loss benefits, reduce risk, transfer the risk, control the risk. This is the kind of attitude the process, one of which may be adopted. So, for example, there is when you are managing the risk, you may transfer the risk. Most of the time, to transfer the risk, they are transfer the risk to the vendor. When we are transferring the risk, meaning through the contract, like for insurance, Ecoterm, this is a kind of strategy to transfer the risk. Control the risk is what we said before. When it's about to reduce the risk, is also about an attitude we are talking about later, and to return a risk. So this is a kind of attitude vis-a-vis of risk. And the risk should not be avoided, it should be understood and managed. This is just a lesson how to avoid the risk. Now, how to transfer the risk? We transfer the risk through the insurance market. You know, for example, during the in the Ecoterm, in most of Ecoterm, there is a risk aspect. And on the risk aspect, the transfer of risk may be between the supplier when it's about the transportation and the insurance, or the client. It depends, but if everything for Ecoterm you have to pay for this risk, if you are making all the risk to the vendor, so the price will be also high. It depends. There is also for the vendor for third party. Most of the time, this is when you contract, you have to pay, because when you contract, for example, for work contract. For work contract, there is a third party which have to cover the risk when there is a problem. Some risk may be covered by the vendor or the third party. And also for the Ecoterm. Ecoterm most of the time is in transport sector. Now, in the risk control, for the client, the source of risk, how to control it is by performance bond or guarantee. Is, for example, for works and service, we are using performance bond and guarantee to prevent the risk of non-implementation. In contract, there is many conditions in contract. In general condition, when we put many aspects of risk mitigation to avoid that organization may support the risk of non-implementation of a contract. There is also sometimes to splitting award, meaning sometimes the vendor may be awarded a huge amount to supply a huge quantity, but during implementation, it may face some problem of implementation. So before going, we have to split the award with 2 vendors in order to avoid the risk. There is also some risk related to Incoterm when we just make a transport separately, and we buy with this Incoterm, but the transport is doing by another organization or another company. There is also for increased insurance coverage. There is also this liquidity damage when there is related to the quality of which was of good or service was being provided, or the delay of a time. So this is the kind of the risk mitigation measure we are putting in place in our organization. All this kind of risk for FAO is what we are using in order to control the risk when we award the supplier. So this is just a summary of my presentation, and I think this is kind of overview, but we are open to different questions you may ask. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joseph. So I will get into the questions now. The first one is, can you hear me?
Yes,
how
yes,
can we,
I hear you.
The first question is, how can we avoid the risk management in the stage of planning a project?
In the planning project, first of all, we are just dealing for the procurement, which is in planning project. We have to involve at early stage procurement staff to identify, first of all, is to make a proper planning. In proper planning, there is different steps. There is a step of specification, which I have to really to be clear and to involve all different experts which are drafting the specification. And the project also, the costing, the budget costing also is in a project plan. There is also the timing. The timing is very important. The procurement is a process. The process may take 3 months, 6 months to end for the deliver. And this aspect also very important in the procurement, project planning. When the project planning don't take account of specification, of timing, of budget, be sure that you face risk ahead during the implementation. This is some aspect of a project, but there is different, there is even more literature about how to implement at each step. I may just read. There is but for example, in planning, there is a documentation, useful documentation for UN, which they are just details at each step. For example, for planning and a procurement activity, most of risk which occur is understatement or overstatement of a need. There is insufficient funding. There is impractical time frame. So what I have already said. And there is also in a project planning, there is a risk of narrow definition or commercial specification with using a used brand name. There is also the definition of inappropriate product or service. There may be bias or restrictive specification. There may be inadequate specification. All of these are in project planning. And in procurement, one was during the procurement stage, when there is failure to identify potential source, there is selective inappropriate methods. So at each stage of a process, there is may be a kind of risk. That's why all management is very important.
Okay. The next question is there a higher risk in procuring services versus goods?
It depends. For procurement of goods, the risk most of time are during the selection, and during the selection, when the selection process is well done and the risks are really managed. The risk is during the procurement, the selection of the vendors. When the selection is well done, most of the time the risk mitigation are easy to manage. But for contract, risks are high because the duration of a contract may take a long period and is a complex. For works, for example, may take, and it depends for the amount, it may take 2 years, and the contract, management of contract are very complex. So, and there is also many partners in this, many stakeholders in the implementation of a contract. So risks are high in contract for works and for service than for the good. You may choose a good strategy to source the vendors, and you source even a good contractor, but during implementation, you may face other aspects which was not really planned ahead at this time. So on good, the mitigation are more manageable than the works and service.
Okay, and the next question is what does risk 1, 2, 3, and 4 indicate in the risk map, and how can we use these maps to identify the risk levels while doing procurement?
Okay, let me go through this. You are talking about, yeah, on the risk map.
1, 2,
on the
3,
risk map now, yes.
Yeah.
This risk for the is depend. Impact may be in terms of financial impact. Impact can, so this is likelihood on this risk. The two risks which have high impact, we have to be very, very careful for the management, because this is a high sensitive risk, because this impact the reputation of organization, is impact of the benefits, is impact on many things. So on this level, procurement need training, need to be prepared, need to be aware of all the kind of risk. For the risk of which, when the risks are low, most of the time is in terms of, and the likelihood, this is by accident. It's not come, there is the frequency is very low. So it can, that's why there is this proper control system may avoid this low risk. The control system meaning that during the, this is during, may occur during the procurement process. For example, we may select a vendor with not enough capacity. This may be a source of risk, and perhaps the impact is low, and there is also this penalty, because the organization has its own tools to mitigate the risk. The own tools, what I mentioned here on this, this performance bond, the contingent, this performance bond, this liquidity damage may be managed may be managed for this kind of low risk. Now, when there is a high risk, for the high risk, it's better to split the award. When the risks are very high at this level, so the kind of mitigation measure, the proper strategy is either to split award between two vendors, even for this contract transportation, to use this Ecoterm, AXW, this kind of, and or increase insurance coverage. This is kind of management of this level of risk with high impact. Now, the management of risk for this, which are very frequent, is to increase the control systems in procurement, and also to upgrade the training level of the staff. This is kind of strategy may be used for kind of risk management according to the map.
Okay, thank you. And then the next question is, how do you balance the risk of not complying to the rules versus the risk of not delivering the needed goods in time?
Please, would you repeat again?
How do you balance the risk of not complying to the rules versus the risk of not delivering the needed goods in time?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question. Normally, rules are less important than, because they have to deliver. The management of risk, that's why the rules is applicable, is a tools, but is not the end by the means. We have to prioritize to deliver, and there is, instead of avoiding not doing an action. When we are avoiding action, meaning that, I think I already described it. When you are doing not action, so this is harming the organization. When you are taking a risk, but when you are taking a risk, you should even if there is a high risk, you should substantiate it. And in some organization, there is also kind of clause which are related to deviation of a procedure. We may not apply the procedure, but we may justify why you have taken the action, and what the consequence you have taken, and you manage now the consequence. So every time, not just follow the rules. That's why at the time, but when you are following the rules with this height, look for the cover of your supervisor at this level. So you refer to the supervisor, and you have your cover, and say, you explain the circumstances in what you are in, and you justify the measure you have taken. But the deliver have to be, but not stay aside and doing nothing. Say that because there is many risks, I have not done nothing. No, that's why when there is many high risk, better to request the supervisor advice.
Okay, and the next question is, sometimes mitigation is not applied due to some regulations applied locally. What do we do?
Yeah, this is a very difficult, it depends on different organizations. Even some countries are really strict abiding on the rules than on strategy. And this is a difficult situation, but because you can't go beyond what you have. So I know some countries, even on the rules, when you are not really applied the rules, is a kind of is a matter of justice. So when you break the rules, is a matter. So this is a difficult question, but for some international organizations, which are really professionals on procurement, they know how to deal with this kind of, if some rules are not there, there is some exceptionality to go ahead and to improve it thereafter. That's why even in, for example, for FAO, there is a deviation on the procedure. It may happen that there is the procedure are not followed, but we have to substantiate it, the reason, but we have to request the clearance at high level.
Okay, and the next question is, how do we handle the risk of political interference in procurement?
This political interference is a fraud. So normally this is ethical matters, and when there is a political interference, meaning it's a fraud, and as I mentioned, it is a kind of risk. Is a kind of risk which already identified in a source of risk in procurement: fraud, corruption, unethical or non-professional conduct. This is a source. There is no solution of such. There is in procurement, we have to manually have to make provision of ethics. But if there is no ethics, if there is no prevention measures, it's difficult to deal with this kind of risk, because this is political interference, it's corruption.
Okay, and the next question is risk management necessary for simple procurement methods? For example, shopping method.
Please, will you repeat the question?
Yes, is risk management necessary for simple procurement method? For example, shopping method.
Yes, of course, risk is everywhere. Even in my presentation, when you see the level of risk, low risk at this time, but low risk, when is very frequent, you have an likelihood, it may be even, it may be huge impact with for the budget. If the likelihood are very high, even for the shopping, but the total amount may be high, may be at this level. So it depends. The impact many things. The impact is on the budget. The impact is for the organizational reputation. Impact is many things. So the risk is everywhere, from deep, simple method and complex method.
Okay, so we are getting close to the closing time. I know we still have more questions, which we'll try to get those answers to you via email. So in closing, I would just want to remind you, I did send an email out about our training program, the procurement, which is November 30th. I encourage you to apply and let me know if you have any questions. Information is on our website, which is included in the email that I sent you. And also, I did introduce Parachute earlier, who's our managing director. And I would like Rosanne to just show his picture, his video, so we can introduce you. He's one of our coordinators for Nepal. Rosanne, can you show your video, please?
I think he's off, so it's okay.
Okay. And is Annette still on?
Anand is on.
Annette, do you want to show your picture, your video, please? He's our procurement expert here at IDI. He came in a few minutes late, just so you get to meet him.
Can you walk through the website where the announcement is, so they can see where the registration to be done, etc.? I will bring the website up.
Okay. So we're just gonna go over the website real quick. So that's Aned. I think he just turned off his video. You can see him. The brochure is here. As you can, our start date is November 30th. Okay, thank you. So we just went over our website with information about the training program. If you have additional questions, please feel free to email me. And before we close the session, I'll just have Aned say a quick hello. He's one of our experts at IDI.
Hi, thank you, Elizabeth, and hello to everyone, and Joseph. I am based in India and working with IDI in terms of bringing new, insightful courses in the area of public procurement, and world policies to the people working around the globe. So what we have been talking about the online version of the course that we have already launched, and Elizabeth has showed all of you like how you can go online and apply for the course. And I request everyone to apply and circulate it among your group, the people you know. It will benefit them because we have introduced and tried to cover something related to emergency procurement, which everyone is facing nowadays, all the people. So during today's webinar, Joseph rightly pointed out all the risks. So in emergency situations, you have greater risks to fulfill all the requirements of your state government or federal government or the department you work for. So over to you, Elizabeth. Yeah.
Thank you. And Rosen turned off his video. Just want him to show his face so everybody can see him.
Thank you very much.
So Rosen is one of the coordinators here at IDI. So this is, we're going to end our session. I want to just remind you to visit our website. And also we have this presentation live on Facebook, which you can go back and watch at your convenient time. And then we will email you the slides as well as the whole video that we had today with this discussion. So as of now, I will go ahead and close the session. Thank you everyone for attending this discussion.